"You're not his type. He'd never look at you,"
How could
said
you
the
do this?
stepsister, until the Alpha King claimed her.
I trusted you.
Its towers and spires, gilded with gold and shadowed by centuries of power, seemed to reach toward a sky already darkening with the first stars. Within the grand halls of the keep, candlelight flickered over marble floors, casting elongated shadows that danced along the walls. In one such hall, Ilara moved quietly, her bare feet making no sound on the cold stone. She carried a tray of silver cups filled with wine, balancing them carefully as she passed beneath portraits of kings and queens long gone. Her hair was pinned loosely behind her head, her plain dress barely drawing the eye. The courtiers and guards paid her no attention, not that she expected them to. Ilara had learned long ago that the best way to survive was to be invisible, but invisibility had its cost. Every day, her stepsister Maris reminded her of it. Maris, with her bright hair, piercing green eyes and cruel tongue, had made it her mission to ensure Ilara felt worthless. "You think the king would even glance at you?" Maris hissed one morning as they walked through the gardens. Her words were soft but sharp, meant to sting. "He wouldn't. He wouldn't look at someone plain like you." Ilara bit her lip, pretending not to hear. She had heard it too many times before. She had tried to ignore Mari's words, tried to tell herself that one day they would mean nothing. But deep inside, a small seed of longing had taken root. She had seen the king only a few times, always from a distance. Tall, commanding, and terrifyingly beautiful, Kalen seemed like a man carved from shadow and moonlight. His eyes, dark and unreadable, could make a grown soldier freeze in fear. Yet for all his power, Ilara had sensed a loneliness behind them, something she could not name. That evening, she wandered alone into the east wing of the keep, a place few dared to enter. Dust settled on the floor like forgotten memories, and the air smelled faintly of old paper and candle smoke. At the end of the corridor she found it, an ancient mirror, framed in silver carved with twisting vines and faces that seemed to whisper when she looked at them. Ilara had never seen it before, but something drew her closer. Her reflection stared back at her, but it was not the reflection she expected. In the glass, her eyes seemed brighter, her posture taller, and for a fleeting moment she looked seen. She blinked and the image shifted. Shadows pooled in the corners of the mirror and a faint voice whispered words she could not fully hear. Her heart hammered. She stepped back. This is not possible," she murmured, but the pull was too strong. Tentatively, she reached out, her fingers brushing the cold surface. The moment she touched it, a flash of light and shadow engulfed her vision. She saw him, Kalen, standing in a garden she did not recognize. His armor gleamed in moonlight, but there was no kingly poise now. His shoulders were tense and his eyes held a grief that chilled her. He spoke, though no sound reached her ears. Still, she understood. He was calling out for someone to see him, someone who would not fear the darkness within him. Someone like her. The vision ended as suddenly as it had begun, leaving Ilara trembling, her hand pressed to the mirror. She gasped, her mind racing. Could it be magic, or some trick of her imagination? Either way, something had changed within her. The quiet longing she had buried deep had shifted into something dangerous, a hope she could not name, a desire to step into a world that had always ignored her. Later that night, the castle was quiet except for the occasional clink of armor from the guards patrolling the outer walls. Ilara sat by her small window in the servants' quarters, the moonlight spilling over her face. She thought of Kalen, the weight of his crown, the isolation behind his sharp features, and the sudden sense that perhaps he was not the untouchable man she had imagined. Perhaps he was also trapped in a world that demanded he remain alone. Maris would never understand. She would never understand the quiet courage it took to endure, the strength it required to hold herself together while being invisible to the world. Ilara clenched her fists, the memory of her stepsister's mocking smile burning in her mind. One day she would show everyone, that invisibility could hide more than weakness. It could hide power. The next morning, the halls of the keep were already bustling. Servants hurried to prepare the dining hall, while the nobility whispered in corners about the latest rumors, threats from rival kingdoms, rumors of magic in the north, and the looming presence of the king himself. Alara moved among them quietly, carrying baskets of fruit, her eyes scanning the corridors for any sign of Kalen. She did not have to wait long. From the top of the grand staircase he appeared. Even at a distance, his presence was impossible to ignore. The courtiers fell silent, their chatter fading as if the air itself respected his power. He wore a dark cloak over his armor, the silver crest of the kingdom gleaming on his chest. His eyes scanned the room, sharp and calculating, and then they paused. Alara froze, her heart thundering in her chest. She could not look away. It was not just fear, it was recognition. For a fleeting moment she felt as though he could see her, truly see her, beyond the plain dress, beyond the whispered words of her stepsister. And then he moved on and the spell broke. She blinked, her hands trembling. The day passed in a blur of activity. Alara went about her tasks, but her mind kept returning to the fleeting moment when the king's eyes had met hers. She wondered if it had been a trick of the light, a product of her imagination. But deep down, she knew it had not. There had been something in his gaze, something that called to the part of her that longed to belong, to be seen, to matter. By evening, she found herself once again drawn to the east wing, the mirror that had shown her visions the night before, standing silently, waiting. She placed her hand on it again, and this time, the vision returned more vividly. Kalen was there, standing on a balcony overlooking a forest set ablaze by some unseen force. His expression was haunted, his eyes searching for someone to help him, to share his burden. "Alara," the voice whispered, faint but unmistakable. The mirror trembled beneath her touch, and she felt a pull as if it wanted her to step through, to leave the safe world she had always known. A sudden noise behind her made her spin. A shadow fell across the floor, Kalen himself, standing at the entrance of the corridor. The candlelight caught on his armor, glinting in sharp angles. His dark eyes were fixed on her, intense and unreadable. You can see me," he said, his voice low, smooth, and commanding, yet edged with a curiosity that made her heart leap. I was just looking," she stammered, her voice barely audible. Her mind raced, unsure whether to flee or stay frozen in the moment. "You were not supposed to find this place," he said, stepping closer. His presence filled the corridor, making the shadows themselves seem to lean toward him. "Yet here you are." Alara swallowed hard. I did not mean any harm," she whispered. Kalen's gaze did not soften, yet there was something almost imperceptible in the way he studied her, a flicker of interest, a recognition of something beyond the ordinary. "You are brave or foolish," he said. "Perhaps both." Her pulse quickened. She had never spoken to the king before, never dared. And now he was here, inches away, and the world had narrowed to the space between them. Why are you here?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kalen's eyes darkened, filled with a storm she could not name. "I am here because someone needs to see what is hidden," he said, his words cryptic but filled with weight. "And perhaps someone has already been chosen to do so." Alara felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mixture of fear and something she could not quite define, hope maybe. She wanted to speak, to ask more, but the words failed her. She simply nodded, her gaze locked on his, understanding in some unspoken way that her life was about to change. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. Without looking back, he said, "Remember this, appearances are never what they seem. Some truths are hidden in plain sight, and some hearts are stronger than they look." And with that, he disappeared down the corridor, leaving Alara trembling, her mind racing, her heart pounding. She sank to the floor, clutching the edge of the mirror, knowing that something had begun, a story she could neither escape nor fully understand. That night, as she lay in her small bed, the candle flickering beside her, She thought of Kalen, of the haunted look in his eyes, of the strange pull she felt toward him. The words of her stepsister came back, sharp as ever. "You're not his type. He'd never look at you." But now Ilara knew the truth. Perhaps the king had never looked before, but now he had. And for the first time in her life she dared to wonder, what if she could be seen, truly seen, by someone like him? Outside, the wind howled through the towers of Valerian Keep, carrying with it the scent of distant forests and unseen magic. And somewhere in the darkness, the kingdom waited, holding its breath, for the story of Ilara and the Alpha King to unfold. The castle hummed with life that evening. Torches burned along the stone walls, casting golden light over tapestries that told stories of kings and queens long dead. Servants scurried between tables, setting plates and polishing silverware, while nobles in glittering gowns whispered secrets in corners. Tonight was the annual winter ball, an event that brought together the wealthiest and most powerful from across the kingdoms. Ilara moved quietly through the halls, her heart thudding in her chest. She had been assigned to assist in the preparations, fetching wine, arranging flowers, and ensuring the servants were in place. She wore a simple dark dress that hid her slender figure, and her hair was braided neatly down her back. She tried to stay invisible as always, yet something about tonight felt different. The air buzzed with a tension she could not name. Her stepsister, Maris, appeared at the top of the staircase, her laughter ringing sharp and cruel. "Try not to trip in front of the king tonight, little sister," she called, her voice dripping with mockery. "You wouldn't want him to laugh at you." Ilara bit her tongue, gripping the tray of goblets tighter. She had learned long ago that arguing with Maris only led to humiliation. Instead, she moved silently, focusing on her duties. Yet her thoughts kept drifting to Kalen, the Alpha King. The memory of their encounter near the mirror haunted her, the way his dark eyes had studied her, the faint flicker of recognition she had glimpsed. The hall doors opened with a grand sweep, and a hush fell over the crowd. Kalen entered, his presence commanding every gaze. His dark cloak flowed behind him, and the silver crest of Valerian shimmered under the torchlight. Servants curtsied instinctively, nobles whispered in awe, and Ilara froze, her breath catching. For a moment, their eyes met across the crowded room. Her heart leapt and she quickly looked away, pretending to arrange the flowers on the nearest table. But she knew the connection had not been broken. Kalen moved through the crowd like a shadow, observing, listening, and speaking only when necessary. He was not smiling, yet there was a faint warmth in his eyes when they briefly landed on her. That small glance sent a thrill through Ilara she could neither deny nor understand. As the evening wore on, music filled the hall. The orchestra played a soft, haunting melody, the notes drifting like smoke over the polished floors. Nobles began to pair off for the first dance, their movements elegant and practiced. Ilara stood near the edge, carrying a tray of wine, unnoticed by all but her stepsister, who whispered cruelly in her ear. "You'll never dance with him," Maris said, her voice a cold knife. "He doesn't even know you exist. You should stay out of his way, or worse things might happen." Ilara's fingers tightened around the tray, her knuckles whitening. She wanted to speak, to protest, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she focused on her work, letting the whispers fade into the background. Then Kalen's voice cut through the music, low and commanding. "You there?" Ilara froze, her heart leaping. The king's gaze was fixed on her, cutting through the crowd like a blade. Every nerve in her body screamed for her to run, yet she could not move. "Step forward," he said. She hesitated, feeling the weight of every eye in the room upon her. But some invisible force seemed to pull her forward, guiding her steps toward him. The nobles whispered among themselves, curious, surprised, and some clearly amused. Kalen extended his hand. "Dance with me." Ilara's breath caught. Her mind screamed that this was impossible, that she had no right, no place here. But the pull in her chest, the strange, undeniable connection, was stronger than fear. Slowly she placed her hand in his, her fingers trembling. The moment she touched him, the world seemed to shift. The music became sharper, the torches brighter, and yet the space around them felt private, separate from the rest of the hall. Kalen's grip was firm, commanding, yet not unkind. "You are braver than I expected," he said softly, so only she could hear. I did not expect this," Alara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Expectations are dangerous," Kalen replied, his eyes locked on hers. "They often blind us to what truly matters." As they moved across the floor, the nobles watched, whispers growing louder. Some admired the sight, others judged it, but neither mattered. Alara felt herself growing stronger with each step, each glance, each heartbeat shared between them. For the first time she felt seen, not as a servant, not as a plain girl, but as someone capable, someone alive. Then the moment shattered. A loud crack echoed through the hall, and a glass display holding a dark, crystalline relic fell to the floor, shattering into jagged pieces. A cold wind swept through the room, extinguishing some of the candles, and a low hum vibrated in the stone walls. Alara stumbled backward, startled, and Kalen steadied her, his hand firm on her elbow. His eyes narrowed, scanning the shattered relic. The nobles murmured nervously, some crossing themselves or whispering prayers. "That relic," Kalen muttered, his voice tense. "It should not have been disturbed." Alara's heart pounded. She had been the one closest to the display. A wave of dread washed over her as the shattered pieces glimmered with an otherworldly light. She could feel it, something ancient, something powerful, awakening. Kalen's hand tightened around hers, and she looked up into his eyes, finding a mixture of command and concern. "Do not fear," he said, though his jaw was tight. "This is not your fault, but it has chosen to speak through you." Alara felt a shiver run down her spine. Chills of both fear and awe swept over her. "Chosen me?" she whispered, unsure of what he meant. "Yes," Kalen replied, his gaze never leaving hers. "Some magic is drawn to the heart it needs, and tonight it has found yours." The music resumed, though the melody now carried a haunting, eerie undertone. The nobles moved aside, unsure whether to continue the ball or flee. But Kalen guided Alara through the steps, his presence anchoring her as the energy from the relic swirled around them. "You are stronger than you realize," he murmured, his voice brushing against her ear. "There is courage in you that even you do not know exists." "Do you understand?" Alara's throat tightened. I think so," she said, though her voice was uncertain. Kalen's eyes softened ever so slightly. "Then hold on to it. Whatever comes next, you must be ready." As they danced, Alara felt the connection between them deepen. It was not just physical closeness, though she could feel the warmth of his hand and the weight of his gaze. It was something more, something intangible, an understanding of loneliness and longing, of burdens carried silently. For a fleeting moment, the walls she had built around herself seemed to crumble, and she realized she was no longer invisible. Suddenly, the shadows in the hall flickered unnaturally, stretching across the walls like living fingers. The nobles gasped, stepping back, and Alara felt the hair on her arms rise. A whisper of voices echoed through the room, unintelligible but urgent, tugging at her mind. Kalen stiffened beside her, his eyes scanning the shadows. "The relic has awakened something," he said, his voice tense but controlled. "Stay close to me. Whatever this is, we face it together." Alara nodded, gripping his hand tightly. Her fear mingled with exhilaration, and she realized that she trusted him completely, though she barely understood why. Every instinct in her body told her to flee, yet every heartbeat whispered that she belonged here, in this storm of magic and power beside him. The shadows began to twist, forming shapes that seemed almost human. Figures emerged, pale and spectral, circling the edges of the hall. The nobles shrieked and ran, but Kalen stood firm, pulling Alara behind him. "Do not be afraid," he said. "They will not harm you, not while I am here." One of the spectral figures drifted closer, its eyes hollow, its presence chilling. Alara felt a strange connection to it, as though it recognized her, or perhaps the power within her. She took a shaky breath and the figure paused, tilting its head. Then, without warning, it dissolved into smoke, leaving behind a faint shimmer of light. Kalen exhaled slowly, finally allowing a flicker of relief to touch his expression. "It is done for now," he said. He looked at her, his eyes soft but intense. "You have more power than you realize, Alara, and now the kingdom knows in some way that you are connected to what cannot be ignored." Alara felt the weight of his words, both terrifying and exhilarating. Her life had changed in an instant. No longer could she remain invisible, no longer could she hide from the world or from herself. The music resumed fully, though the hall was quieter now, the nobles wary and awed. Kalen led Alara to the side, letting her catch her breath. "You have done well," he said. "Tonight you showed courage, but this is only the beginning. The relic and whatever it has awakened will not remain quiet, and neither will the forces that watch us." Alara nodded, feeling both fear and a strange thrill. I will try," she said. Kalen's hand brushed hers almost tenderly, yet with the weight of command. "Trying is not enough. You must be ready, and more than that, you must choose. Will you stand with me even when the path is dark?" Her pulse quickened. I will," she whispered, not fully understanding what she had promised, but knowing with certainty that she could not turn away. Kalen's gaze softened, and for a moment the mask of the Alpha King fell, revealing the man beneath, haunted, burdened, yet capable of something softer, something that Alara felt she could touch, even from a distance. As the night stretched on, the winter ball continued, though its brilliance was dimmed by the presence of the relic's lingering magic. And in the quiet corners of the hall, whispers began to spread, about the girl who had stood beside the Alpha King, about the courage she had shown, and about the bond that now tied them, unseen but undeniable. Alara returned to her quarters that night, exhausted and exhilarated, her mind spinning with the events of the evening. The shadows of the hall, the touch of Kalen's hand, the hum of the relic's magic, they all lingered in her thoughts. She realized that nothing would ever be the same again. She was no longer the unseen flower of Valerian Keep. Something had awakened within her, and it was connected to the Alpha King in ways she could neither predict nor ignore. Outside, the castle slept under a moonless sky, but inside, the threads of fate had been pulled taut. And somewhere in the darkness, the forces of magic and power waited, watching and ready to challenge the girl who had dared to step into the light. The kingdom of Valerian was not at peace. Even as the morning sun rose over the jagged mountains, the forests beyond the castle whispered of danger. Travelers spoke of shadows that moved with minds of their own, and merchants brought rumors of strange lights in the northern hills. Inside the castle, Kalen's face was taut with worry. He had sensed it for days. The relic's magic was stirring forces that had lain dormant for centuries. Alara, now more aware of the power within her, walked beside him through the stone corridors. Her steps were no longer hesitant. She carried herself with a quiet confidence, though her chest still trembled with unease. She had learned to feel the currents of magic in the castle, to sense the slightest shift in energy. It was strange, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. "Do you feel it?" Kalen asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. His dark eyes scanned the shadows as if expecting them to move. Alara nodded. "Yes, it is like a pulse, something alive, watching." "That is exactly what it is," he said grimly. "The relic has awakened something old, something that cannot be tamed easily, and it will not be content until it has tested us." Alara swallowed hard. The memory of the winter ball, the shards of the dark crystal, and the spectral figures that had danced through the hall made her pulse quicken. She felt the relic's echo in her chest, a connection that was growing stronger, tying her to Kalen in ways she could neither explain nor resist. The castle itself seemed to shiver that day. Guards whispered of strange noises in the halls, shadows moving against the flow of light, and doors that opened on their own. Kalen moved with a king's authority, but even he could not ignore the unease that gripped the castle. "Tonight," he said as they entered the war room, "we will face whatever has been awakened. The relic does not act alone. It draws strength from fear and darkness, and it will test us in ways we cannot yet imagine." Alara's hands clenched at her sides. "I am ready," she said, though her voice was steadier than she felt. Kalen turned to her, his dark eyes softened with something almost imperceptible. "Ready?" he asked, his voice teasing yet serious. "Do you understand that once we step into this, nothing will be the same? It will not only test our courage, it will test who we are and what we are willing to sacrifice." "I understand," she whispered. There was no turning back now. Night fell quickly over Valerian, the sky heavy with clouds that blotted out the moon. A storm brewed in the distance, rolling thunder like the growl of some ancient beast. The courtiers had long since retired, leaving only the king, his trusted guards, and Alara in the heart of the castle. They approached the eastern tower, where the shards of the relic had been collected. A cold wind swept through the stone halls, carrying whispers that seemed almost human. Alara felt it brush against her mind, tugging at memories she did not know she had, filling her with both fear and determination. Kalen placed a hand on the door, his other hand gripping the hilt of his sword. "Stay close to me," he said. "The power within you, it will be tested first. You must not falter." Alara nodded, feeling the strange warmth that always came when she was near him. It was not just courage, it was trust, an unspoken bond that had grown stronger since the night of the winter ball. Inside the tower, the shards of the relic shimmered with an eerie light. Shadows coiled around them, moving as though alive. The air was thick with energy, and Alara could feel it thrumming through her veins, calling to her, demanding she act. "Focus," Kalen said. "The relic will not harm you if you control your fear." Alara took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment. She reached out with her mind, feeling the shards as though they were part of her own body. The whispers grew louder, but she resisted, letting the warmth of Kalen's presence anchor her. Suddenly, the shadows surged. Figures formed from the darkness, twisting and writhing, moving toward them with silent menace. Kalen drew his sword, its silver edge gleaming in the flickering light. The first shadow lunged, and Alara reacted instinctively, raising her hand. A pulse of energy shot from her palm, striking the shadow and causing it to dissolve into smoke. Kalen's eyes widened in surprise and approval. "You are stronger than I realized," he said. "Do not doubt yourself. Control the power and it will fight for you." Alara's chest heaved. The shadows kept coming, and each time she pushed them back, she felt a new strength growing within her. But she also felt the pull of the relic, a voice that whispered of secrets, of danger, and of a fate tied to Kalen in ways she did not yet understand. "You are doing well," Kalen said, guiding her with his hand lightly on her back. "But remember, this is only the beginning. There is more to come, and the forces we face will not be so easy to defeat." As the last of the shadows dissolved, a chill swept through the tower. The shards of the relic glowed brighter, then suddenly one of them flew into the air, spinning violently. Alara reached out instinctively, catching it with a force that surprised even her. The shard pulsed in her hand, warm and alive, as if it recognized her touch. Kalen stepped closer, studying her. "It has chosen you," he said quietly, "and in doing so it has bound your fate to mine. Whatever happens next, we face it together." Alara looked up at him, her heart hammering. I will not fail," she said, though fear and uncertainty lingered in her chest. Kalen's lips twitched in the faintest of smiles. "I do not doubt you," he said, "but you must also understand, the path we are on is dangerous. Not only because of the magic, but because of those who would see this power destroyed or worse, used against the kingdom." Alara's brow furrowed. "Enemies inside the castle." "Yes," he said grimly. "There are those who would betray us, those who fear what they cannot control." and they will try to manipulate the magic for their own ends. You must be vigilant, Alara. Trust is a fragile thing and deception can come from anywhere. She nodded, absorbing his words. Despite the danger, despite the fear, a spark of determination grew in her chest. She was no longer the invisible servant girl. She had power, courage, and now a bond with the king that was unbreakable. For a moment they stood in silence, the storm outside echoing the tension within the tower. Then Kalen spoke again, softer this time. "You have grown so quickly," he said, his voice carrying a note of something tender, almost hidden. "And yet, you do not yet see the full weight of what you carry. The relic is not merely a tool, it is a test, and the test is far from over." Alara looked at him, her dark eyes meeting his. I am ready for it," she said, though she did not fully understand what it meant. Kalen's gaze softened and he reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Then we will face it together," he said. "No matter the shadows, no matter the danger, no matter the cost, together." The storm outside grew stronger, lightning flashing across the sky, illuminating the castle in brilliant bursts. Thunder rolled like a drumbeat, echoing through the mountains. And in that moment, Alara felt a surge of courage, of connection, and of something deeper she could not name, a bond that went beyond fear, beyond duty, beyond magic. But the storm was only a warning. Deep in the forests beyond Valerian, unseen eyes watched. Forces older than the kingdom itself stirred in the shadows, drawn to the relic and the girl who now wielded its power. Their whispers carried on the wind, speaking of tests yet to come, trials that would push courage and trust to their limits, and a darkness that would not be ignored. As Alara and Kalen descended from the tower, the shards of the relic safely contained once more, the king spoke quietly, almost to himself. "The eclipse approaches," he said, "and with it, a darkness that will challenge us in ways we cannot yet imagine." Alara glanced at him, the weight of his words sinking in. "Eclipse?" she asked softly. "Yes," he said, his gaze distant, thoughtful. "A rare alignment. It is said that when the sun and moon meet in shadow, the magic of the world grows and the strongest hearts are tested. Our bond, our courage, everything will be tested in its light and shadow." Alara nodded, her resolve hardening. She did not know what lay ahead, but she knew this. She would stand by Kalen. Through the shadows, through the storms, through the trials that awaited. She would not falter. And as the castle settled into uneasy quiet and the storm raged in the distance, both the king and the girl felt the unspoken truth between them. Something had begun that could not be undone. Something that would change them both and the kingdom forever. The relic pulsed faintly in the darkness, as if approving their resolve, and somewhere deep in the shadows, a whisper carried on the wind. "The eclipse is coming, and hearts must either break or shine." The night of the eclipse had come. Valerian Keep lay under a sky split between shadow and light, the moon and sun locked in an unnatural embrace. The castle walls glimmered silver under the eclipse's light, and every torch seemed to burn with a colder flame, casting long, twisting shadows that moved as though alive. Alara stood at the top of the eastern tower, the shards of the relic gathered carefully before her. Her hands trembled slightly, but the fear that had once gripped her chest had been replaced by determination. She had trained, she had learned to harness the power inside her, and now, at this decisive moment, she felt ready. Kalen stepped beside her, his cloak fluttering in the wind. His dark eyes, always sharp and commanding, softened as they fell upon her. "You are ready," he said, though his tone carried both reassurance and warning. "The shadows will not give up easily, and neither will the forces that oppose us." Alara nodded, taking a deep breath. "I am ready. I will not fail, not now." The wind whipped around them, carrying whispers from the relic, murmurs of ancient power, and the voices of the spirits that had been stirred months before. The castle itself seemed alive, holding its breath, waiting for what was to come. Below, the courtyard was filled with the forces of the kingdom. soldiers standing ready to defend against any threat, though none dared to move forward without Kalen's command. The eclipse was more than a celestial event. It was a moment when the power of the world would test them all. A sudden pulse of energy shot through the tower, and the shards of the relic glowed brighter than ever. Shadows twisted upward, coiling around the stones and reaching for the sky. Alara felt the power surge inside her, a wave of energy that demanded control, demanded courage. She raised her hands, channeling the magic she had learned to trust. "Focus," Kalen said, his voice steady but strong. "You are the key. Do not let fear guide your hand." The shadows reacted immediately, striking at her from all sides, but Alara stood firm. With a deep breath, she pushed outward, the shards responding to her will. Light flared from her palms, striking the shadows and forcing them to retreat. Each pulse of magic required concentration, courage, and trust, not just in her own strength, but in Kalen's presence beside her. For a moment the shadows paused, swirling above the tower in a tempest of darkness and smoke. Then, with a roar that shook the stones beneath them, a figure emerged, a shadow older and darker than any she had seen, its form both terrifying and majestic. Its eyes burned like embers and the air around it seemed to chill. Kalen stepped forward, drawing his sword, the silver glinting in the eclipse's light. "Alara, you must hold your ground," he said. "Do not let it touch you with fear." Alara lifted her hands, the shards of the relic spinning in a circle around her. "I will not," she said, her voice firm. "I am ready." The shadows surged toward them, moving faster than the eye could follow. Alara concentrated, drawing the magic through herself, feeling its warmth and strength. She raised her hand, and a wave of energy shot forward, colliding with the shadow. It screeched, a sound that seemed to pierce the very stones of the castle. Kalen fought beside her, each swing of his sword cutting through tendrils of darkness. Together, they became a force of light and steel, their movements synchronized, their bond unspoken but unbreakable. The shadow recoiled, testing them, striking again and again, but Alara held her ground, feeling the power within her grow stronger with each pulse. "You are extraordinary," Kalen said, his voice carrying over the roar of the magic. "Do not doubt yourself. You can end this." Alara nodded, summoning all her strength. She reached out to the relic, letting its energy flow freely through her. The shards glowed with a brilliance that rivaled the eclipse itself, forming a protective circle around her. The shadow lunged once more, but this time it met the force of their combined power. A flash of light erupted, blinding and warm, pushing the darkness back. The shadow shrieked, twisting and breaking apart, dissolving into nothingness. The remnants of its form scattered like smoke in the wind, leaving the tower bathed in calm light once more. Alara sank to her knees, exhausted but triumphant. Kalen knelt beside her, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You faced it and you prevailed." She looked up at him, her chest heaving. "We did it," she said, "together." Kalen's eyes softened and he brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Yes," he said. "Together." For a moment, the king who bore the weight of a kingdom allowed himself to simply be a man, standing beside the girl who had changed everything. The eclipse passed, the moon and sun returning to their separate places in the sky. Light spread across the castle, chasing away the lingering shadows. The air was still, charged with the remnants of magic, but calm now, peaceful. Below, the soldiers and courtiers began to emerge from their hiding, witnessing the calm and the light that had returned. Whispers spread through the castle, of courage, of power, and of the girl who had stood beside the Alpha King and faced the darkness. Alara rose to her feet, the exhaustion of battle weighing on her, but also the exhilaration of survival. She looked at Kalen, who had returned his sword to its sheath, his cloak settling around him like a shadow that had found its place. "You were incredible," he said, his voice soft, almost reverent. "Not just with magic, but with your heart. You did not let fear rule you. You chose courage, and that is what makes all the difference." Alara's lips trembled in a small smile. "I could not have done it without you," she admitted. You believed in me when I doubted myself." Kaelin's eyes held hers, dark and stormy, yet filled with warmth. "And I always will," he said. "You are not just a girl I noticed. You are someone I trust, someone I rely on, someone I care for, more than I can say." Alara felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she had never known before. In the middle of danger, of power and magic and uncertainty, she had found something real, a bond that went beyond fear, beyond duty, beyond even the power of the relic. But even in victory, there were consequences. The remnants of the shadow lingered in hidden corners of the castle, and the magic of the relic hummed with a quiet intensity, as if warning them that the world had changed forever. Kaelin took her hand, guiding her to the balcony overlooking the courtyard. "The kingdom will need to see strength now, not just magic. People will look to us for guidance, for hope, and together we can lead." Alara nodded. I will stand with you," she said, her voice steady, "through everything." "And I with you," he replied. "No matter the shadows, no matter the storms, we will face them as one." For a long moment they stood there, hand in hand, gazing out over the kingdom that had always seemed so vast, so untouchable. Now it felt smaller, more personal. They were no longer just ruler and subject, king and servant. They were partners in a journey neither could have imagined alone. Maris appeared at the balcony's edge, her usual arrogance gone, replaced by awe and perhaps a flicker of shame. I did not understand," she said softly. "I did not see how strong you are." Alara turned to her stepsister, not with anger but with a quiet authority. "Strength is not always what is visible," she said, "and courage is something you earn, not inherit." Maris looked down, the words sinking in. For the first time she seemed small, not in stature, but in perspective, forced to acknowledge the growth and courage of the sister she had long belittled. As the first rays of dawn spread across the mountains, bathing the castle in golden light, Alara felt a sense of peace she had never known. The relic's power had been tamed, the shadows defeated, and the bond between her and Kaelin solidified. The kingdom would endure, not only because of strength and leadership, but because of trust, courage, and the quiet power of hearts united. Kaelin lifted her hand, his dark eyes meeting hers with unwavering certainty. "The world may never have seen you before," he said softly, "but I always have." Alara smiled, the weight of months of fear, doubt, and longing lifting from her shoulders. "Then we will face whatever comes next," she said, her voice strong. "Together." The wind carried their laughter across the castle walls, mingling with the birdsong of a new day. Shadows had been defeated, darkness had been challenged, and the light of courage, trust, and love had prevailed. And somewhere deep in the mountains, the remnants of the relic pulsed faintly, as if approving, whispering a promise of balance restored and futures yet unwritten. Alara and Kaelin stood side by side, the Alpha King and the once unseen girl who had found her courage, her power, and her heart. Together, they were no longer defined by fear or expectation. They were defined by choice, by trust, and by a bond that would shine even in the darkest shadows. The kingdom of Valerian had seen its dawn, and so had Alara.